week we're talking about vintage stuff. This one's truly vintage. This one's vintage as in history, vintage-wise. But, you know, it's obviously only a, 11-year-old camera. But this one is true vintage. This one from 1939. But anyway, that's what we're talking about today is, vintage. Why would you buy vintage? Why would you use vintage? So stay tuned and we'll get into the meat of this right now. Here I am, Vietnam. This is Camera Talk with Dr. Scott. All right, this week, a little bit different than the normal kind of videos that I'm doing. Instead of looking at individual lenses or families of lenses or camera systems, things like this. Today, actually, I just want to talk about really why people get into vintage lenses and really anything old. I'm an old guy, so I get into me. So old! Whatever that means. But still, getting into things vintage is cool, and not only vintage, but getting into things that really touch a little bit of history. Stop touching me! So that's really kind of what I'm gonna look at today. So I'm going to use some vintage lenses as examples. Talk about some brands, such as Leica. I have a Leica M9 here that is not a vintage. I mean, this is from 2009, so it is an older camera. But the history of Leica, though, goes back 100 years or more.
Why I hate math.
Actually, it does go back more. But, as far as its claim to fame comes to be is with these things here, the lenses. As much as the camera bodies are great, film bodies and whatnot, I live in the digital age. Therefore, I take advantage of digital equipment. So I have a digital Leica. I also shoot with a digital Sony A7R2. Mirrorless, both of these are mirrorless. I also have a Sony A7, original A7, but I also have a Canon M50, which is filming this video right now, and it is also mirrorless. So I'm pretty much a mirrorless guy.
No shit, Sherlock!
But as I said, I like vintage things. I like older things. So I'm going to talk about a few of these. And again, looking at something like a Leica, when you compare, since I'm on the subject of holding these in my hand, when you compare these two, the Leica is more of a sense of emotion.
Saying what you feel.
Why would somebody spend so much money on a camera that takes pictures? No video, nothing special, no focus peaking, no magnification. The frames per second aren't all that quick. It's all manual focus. What the fuck? So there's a lot of reasons people would go, oh my God, why would you spend so much money on that? Well, it's because, Leica are the grandfathers of
small metal box and put on a lens. He could put in a little piece of film inside this camera, and you could do test shots, and then you could develop it, and that way you could fine-tune each big roll of film so everything looked the same.
They were the first ones to develop one of these. And so again, it's like holding a piece of history, even if this is only from 2009. Although this particular one was built in 2010. But still, it's a piece of history that goes back. So it gives you an interesting sense of that history just by holding it. Versus the Sony here, their history of photography isn't all that long. For me, growing up, Sony was the people who made my television. Yay! They're the ones who built my Sony Walkman. Yay! They built my Sony PlayStation. Yay! They made movies, Hollywood movies. Yay! And then I heard about them getting into photography and coming up with mirrorless cameras. So, but the great thing with mirrorless though is you can adapt. Just as I have here a Nikon vintage lens. It's a 105 millimeter 2.5. Super excellent, exact same model that produced that Afghan girl on National Geographic cover. I'm sure you all recognize that one. But still, it's a it's a super lens, and on Sony A7R II, I have 42 megapixels that I have lots of resolution that I could use to zoom in and create pictures within pictures type of thing. Versus, again, the Leica here, which is an 18 megapixel.
What are you trying to say?
And it is, it's a CCD sensor versus a CMOS sensor. And, there's arguments about, the CCD being richer in color and whatnot and so on and so forth. But again, that's not the purpose of this this video. I'll make its own video at one point or another. But at Modesty Photography here, we're all about saving money and introducing to vintage lenses and whatnot. So even though I have a 35 and a 50 millimeter Summilux, aspherical floating elements.
Oh my God!
Those are beyond what Modesty Photography is all about, because those are expensive. But what I do talk about here is, again, the emotion of having older things and using them, and the quality of those older things that never gets old. Quality never gets old. So I have everything from my earliest piece, which is a Leica Sumar. So this is the Sumar 50 millimeter f2. Even though it's from 1933, this thing is as old as my grandparents.
At least we're not fucking idiots.
Would have passed away already, but as old as them. And yet this is still a good quality lens. And because Leica, again, being an older model that maintains its mount throughout the years, I can just put an adapter, because this is an L39 screw mount. So I just put a little adapter on there, and boom, I can put that onto my M9 or my Sony A7R II and use it just like it was meant to use back in the day.
Back in my day, we didn't have like me.
Other old things like my Rolex here. Against a film camera. This was from 1939. It's the year World War II started. And it was, again, great German quality build and everything. And again, it's a piece of history, so it's great to have. Moving on up the ladder to, my Scimitar, also Leica, of course, is Ernst Leitz Wetzler back in the day before they became Leica. But the Scimitar 50 millimeter or 5 centimeter, as they called it back then, f2. Again, is a great lens that you can adapt to, add to modern. See, actually, there's an adapter on there now to give it that bayonet mount for the Leica M mount. But anyway, they're great little pieces, and this is something that because again, it's an older lens. It's it's not as expensive as those aspherical lenses that I was just talking about on the Leica. You can buy an older lens like this for $500 or $600. You can get a decent one. That's the year of this one is 1949 is when this one was produced. Again, a great lens, up to a Summicron, which is kind of the granddaddy of the modern Summicrons. And again, this one is from 1954, I do believe. Same thing. It's a 50 millimeter 50 millimeter f2, and you know it's also a great little lens. Bring emotion into using something you're touching a piece of history.
Smash it, that's something that you're into.
And you know, as much as lights or Leica is great, also Carl Zeiss. Carl Zeiss produced some fantastic lenses in their day too. Actually, come from the same part of Germany. You know, whether it's the 50 millimeter Tessar f2.8, you know, which is made between 1954 and 1958, in that range. Same with the Biotar. You know, made at Carl Zeiss Jena factory. This was, of course, when the Soviet Union was controlling East Germany.
The Soviet Union? I thought you guys broke up.
Yes, that's what we wanted you to think.
And you know, the quality of these was so great that when the Soviets had control of that part of Germany, they actually exported the ideas and the optics and everything else back to Russia or Soviet Union. And
I'm back in the USSR. Hey, you don't know how lucky you are, boys. Back in the USSR.
Created like Helios and Jupiter and things like this. So again, great little pieces of history. But it's not just you know, cameras and whatnot. It's also other aspects of history that attract me in these kinds of things. You know, again, ideas such as watches, you know, are another one of my favorites. You know, I have a Rolex here with a California dial from 1945. I have a Omega Seamaster DeVille from 1965. And these are cool. I mean, that's really the whole aspect of having vintage things is the cool factor. And it brings a sense of emotion, a sense of history that you're wearing or using that modern equipment or modern things just don't seem to bring out in your life. And same with cars. You know, I have a 1983 380 Mercedes convertible that I love to drive around in. And besides it being an older car, a vintage car, you know, a lot of people would say, oh yeah, but it's an older car, you know, it's got its problems and whatnot. And it does, you know, it needs a tune-up more often, it needs its oil changed more often. But you get a sense of history driving around in it. And when I stop at a red light, anybody else in a brand new Mercedes doesn't even get a second look. But I do. You know, people stick their thumbs out at me and ask me what year it is and say it looks fantastic shape and everything, because I keep it clean, keep it shiny. But again, it's all part and parcel of the whole vintage mindset. And it's just something that you either love it or hate it. And old things, you know, everything old is new again, so to speak. And other thing, ooh, there's something that's old that's also excellent. 25 years old. You know, this is you know, not as old as the other things, but it makes it taste better. The older, the tastier, right? So a 25-year-old Chivas Regal is pretty tasty. So anyway, that's kind of where I wanted to kind of leave things off at. I just wanted to touch on why I've, you know, fallen in love with vintage things. And of course, you can see behind me up on the shelf here, I have upwards of 80 something vintage lenses that have, you know, if you watch my YouTube channel, you'll see varieties of them throughout the various videos that I've done, and I'm not finished with them yet. I'm still producing more. So so anyway, they're economical, they're full of character compared to today's lenses. People talk about the modern lenses being very clinical, very just straightforward, sharp, so sharp they can, you know, cut the air with a knife, but like a knife, not with a knife. But anyway, you know, I'm not into perfection with that. You know, I'm into artistic, you know, expression and artistic rendering of things.
I don't like the artsy-fartsy thing. I think I hate it.
And you get that with vintage lenses. Every lens.
That's what I'm talking about.
They're all full of character. They're all full of wonder, and you know, you get a sense of history when you're using vintage things. And I wish I would have got into photography, you know, back in the film days, but I didn't. My film days were pretty much Polaroid cameras or the little, you know, the little cardboard cameras you would buy at the drugstore and shoot your roll of film and take it to the Kodak place, and they would print them out for you and whatnot. But so I never got the darkroom experience to really know what that type of photography is. So I'm pretty much a digital photographer, and you know, I'm not going to apologize for that, because that's just you know, the age that I got into photography. So anyway, you know, long story short, go with vintage. You know, vintage is cool. Don't let anybody ever tell you that, you know, your equipment's old or something's, you know, you're better off to get this and that. If you're a professional photographer, and of course you have clients who expect certain things in commercial work and so on and so forth, that's a whole different ballgame.
I'm a fucking artist.
But if you're just a hobbyist or enthusiast, go with your emotion. Go with what makes you feel good. You know, and if you want to buy into such a system as Leica, if you've got the money to buy a brand new one, good for you. If not, buy used. I mean, nothing wrong with used stuff as long as it's been taken care of and it still works. So why not, right? Save yourself a bunch of money in the long run. So that's all I've got for you this week. So this was Modesty Photography.
The wonderful world of Cameraland.
This was Camera Talk with Dr. Scott.
Yes.
Do me a favor and subscribe. Subscribe. And for a third time's a charm, subscribe. And hit the thumbs up. Thumbs up is one of the things that you know, YouTube also uses for its algorithm. And it also gives me opportunity to show you the thumbs up girls. So here they are. And here we are in 2020. The world's full of COVID. Luckily in my country here, where I'm living in Vietnam, we only have 106 as of today, 106 active cases, whereas back in my home country in the USA, they had 235,000 new cases just yesterday.
Holy crap.
So anyway, so I'm glad I'm living here. Anyway, so it was great to see you. Stay safe. See you next week. Come back for more, and have yourself a great weekend. All right, bye-bye.
Here I